Hey, today I'm looking at this Oregon chainsaw. It's a model CS1500. It's about $90 from Lowe's. This one's got an 18-inch bar. I think you can get them in 16, 14, and maybe 12 just by changing the bar. And also bought an extra backup blade. And the blade was about $30, and I think it was a little more expensive than a normal blade because it has this built-in sharpener that comes with the kit. So I guess when your blade wears out, probably the sharpening stone may be worn out too. So anyway, I got an extra blade if I need it, and I've got the saw. And I was really interested to see when I saw that Oregon was making a saw that had a self-sharpening option in it. I was interested to see how it would work because I've used the Oregon products for over 40 years. Their chainsaw blades and their sharpening jigs and files and all that stuff, and I've always been real happy with them. And really, it's hard to find anything else when you go to the hardware store. It's usually at Oregon. And so I wanted to try out their saw and see how their design worked. And if it had been any other brand, I probably wouldn't have considered trying it. But since it's Oregon and I've used them a lot, and it just piqued my interest to see how it would work. And plus, I just wanted to get an electric chainsaw because I don't use my gas saws very often, and it seems like every time I go to use one, they don't start right away. And sometimes I just want to quickly cut some limbs up and stuff like that. And it seems like my limb cutting chore turns into like a chore to get this chainsaw started. So you usually have to tear it down, open up get the spark plug out. I don't know why it does that. It'll be running perfectly. I'll let the gas out of it, put it away. Next time I go to get it, it won't start. And it does it almost every time. My old chainsaw from the 80s, it's a Pulan. That thing pretty much starts whenever I need it to, but it's pretty big. And I usually don't want to drag that out for a small limb. And so one of these electric saws would be very handy, I think. And so we're going to start it on that. I'll open this up and see what it looks like. So first thing I want to do is cut the tape here. It might make it easier to get this thing out. I think let's see how this thing works. You have to pull these tabs out here. Let's see. Try not to destroy the box if I can help it, in case there's some issue with it or something. So it appears to come fully assembled. She's a little tricky to get into. So there's the owner manual there. Get this saw out. It comes with some oil. That's nice. I guess with this saw being self-sharpening, there may be some kind of unique oiling feature to it. So here's the saw. Comes with a guide there. Yeah, the blade looks very different. And she looks a little nasty. And by that I mean you wouldn't want to get that thing. You wouldn't want to get that thing hung up in you. So there's the plug here. So it's got that standard hook that most of the chainsaws have, where you loop the extension cord through here. And there's the trigger, and there's the safety. This is the sharpening mechanism. I don't know how it works exactly yet. I'm going to go read the manual. Looks pretty cool. Oh, it's got this, I think that must shut it off. Like if it kicks back, it must shut off the saw. I'm guessing. I'm going to go read this manual and then come back and get into it some more. Alright, so I've read the manual and I'm going to show you a few things I've learned about the saw. I like to put it on a bucket, just makes it a little handier to deal with. And I've got some gloves here for when I start to handle the blade. But right now I'm going to zoom in on this part here. This is the where all the activity is going to be focused. And I'll tell you right now, there's this knob here is actually two knobs. This inner knob here, the black one, is the lock, and this outer red ring is the tensioner. I'll pull that back a little bit. So you can see if I've got it unlocked, I've loosened the tension, and now if I loosen the tension of the chain, you can see I'm getting far too much. And so when I turn the red knob, you can see it tighten up. So those are the two knobs of interest. So what I'm going to do is take this cover off. Both of these knobs are captive to this cover, and I'll show you how they do that. There's a little clip that holds them both together. So when you remove it, you can see there's a clip here that holds the inner and the outer knobs on this assembly. And there's also, when you attach it back, there's a little tab here that goes into a slot here. So that's how you attach it back. And then there's the teeth on this tensioner here that engage into the teeth here. And so now with the cover out of the way, you can see there's actually this tensioner that I was turning actually says tension on it, and it's got an arrow here that says positive and negative. So if I'm going in the clockwise direction, you can see it's pushing the bar out and tensioning the chain. And if I turn it in the other direction, you can see the bars coming in and it's loosening. So I'll also show you right now, before I remove the chain, this sharpening device here. There's a stone in here and it's held by these two screws. And what you do is you get the chain running at full speed, and then you just lightly touch with the stone for just 1 or 2, maybe 3 seconds. And there will be some sparks that fly off of it, so you'll want to point it not at a flammable thing like gasoline or kerosene. You want to be conscious about where your sparks are going when you're sharpening it. And they say just to use a moderate to mild pressure in just a few seconds. And you can see that it's the way the chain is designed and the cutter, it's different than a normal chainsaw blade. And we'll get into that a little bit later, but this saw blade cannot be sharpened in any other way, they claim, other than using this. And so it's kind of neat. I don't know how it's going to work long term. I'm used to using a round file and sharpening each cutter individually, and then using a flat file to just shorten the guide. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and remove the bar here, because what they tell you, the very first thing you want to do, I'll show you this first here. So when you remove this chain and the bar, this is actually attached, this tensioner is actually attached with a screw, and so it's held in place there. And they also recommend flipping the bar, and right now so if you wear, the cutting surface is going to be down on the bottom here, and you're going to want to flip the bar after some time to even the wear out of the top and the bottom. So you would take the screw out, flip the bar, and put the screw in the other hole, and then you would be cutting on what was the top of the bar, but now is the bottom. So now I'm going to set this aside. I'll show you a few of the other things. What they tell you is when you first get the saw, you put oil in it, and you take the blade off and the bar off, and you just run it for 2 to 3 minutes until you begin to see oil coming out of this hole here, and that primes the pump. And they tell you also that if you haven't used the saw in a while, that you should take the bar off and the chain off and run it until you see oil. And because if you're cutting it and you don't have oil, it's going to really wear the bar out and the chain. And so that's what they tell you to do. I'm not planning on using it today, so I'm not going to run it. It did come with a little bit of oil, but it sounds like I'm going to have to do this whole process again when I put oil in it. So I'll wait and do that at that point. So now I'm going to install this bar and chain back on. Let me zoom back out so you can see it a little better. So the first thing I'm doing is making sure that the chain is inside the groove totally, all along the bar. Then I'm going to engage it down here on this drive, set it into place, and then while I'm holding the bar, I'm going to give it some tension, and you can see it start to tighten up. And then also they say when you do the final adjustment for tension, you're going to want to hold up on the bar. It puts a little bit of force up on the bar because that's the when you're sawing, there's going to be a pressure on the top of the bar. If you held the bar down, tightened it, and then when it went up, it might loosen. So you'd want to tension it. It's like in every chainsaw, you'd want to tension it while you're holding up. And so here's the trigger. I think it's a pretty nice saw. Looking forward to trying it. So now I'm going to put the cover back on. There's a little tab here that goes in the slot. And I'm just going to tighten this down until it engages the teeth. And then I felt it engage the threads, and then I twisted it and I heard it pop in. So now the tensioner is also engaged. I can see that. You would want to make sure the tensioner is fully engaged before you tighten it, because it might not be. And so got that done. So they call this a toolless adjustment. My other chainsaws, you need a wrench actually to do any tensioning of the bar. So there we go. That's a look at the saw. It also has this actually is an anti-kickback switch. And the way that works, when it's kicked in the forward position, that the motor is off, and the motor will not run. So when you go to use it, you want to click it back. And I think the idea of it is when you're sawing and it kicks back, they say this will kick just the inertia of it. I guess there's enough weight in there to trigger the trip. Or also your wrist is in here with a glove, and when it pops back, it'll supposedly stop the chain. So I decided it might be a good idea to go ahead and prime this and make sure it works. So I've put in the oil. I hope it holds more than that. That's not much oil. But there is a oil indicator there, and it is like I can't see oil in it now. So I'm going to go ahead and do what they say to do. I'm going to take off the bar and the chain and run it until I see oil. And I think I'm going to run it sideways like this. Okay, so I decided it might be a good idea to go ahead and test this. I put the oil in there, and I see the oil mark. I'm going to go ahead and run it until I begin to see oil come out of the hole there, just to confirm that it's going to work for me. Now starting to see some oil there. And one thing I see that I really like is I noticed that the this drive gear stops immediately when I let off the trigger. Now I'm getting oil dripping. So I'm glad I did that because I know that the oil pump is working now. So now I can go ahead and put it back together. I was wearing some of these too because it's fairly loud under here.